Hi, everyone. Welcome to the xAPI cohort. Today, we are to be sharing our team projects, and we've had a number of people who have decided their projects aren't quite ready as of yet, but they're going to be continue working on it, and we hope to have some of the cohort demos for you next week. And just so you know, it's not too late. Go ahead and reach out to me. I will put my email in the chat in just a couple minutes. But before I turn things over to Jeff Batt from Learning Dojo, he is going to show us some things. He's going to demo some of the xAPI things for us. And I just have a few things to begin with. So let's get started. Although, let me go back. Sorry about that. Oh, I'm going totally backwards. There we go. All right. So, xAPI party. We have the party scheduled for December 1st, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And please join us for that. We're going to delve into some of the projects. We have received a number of proposals that our team is going through right now, and we'll make sure that you get some of the great xAPI work. We're going to have two different tracks, and one's going to be educational, I believe, and one is projects. And it's going to be the end of this other great semester. And I'm going to put a link in chat for you today where you can go ahead and register for the xAPI party for December 1. And we have dropped a new research report, the state of xAPI adoption. So it's free to Learning Guild members, and you can go ahead and expand some of your knowledge on the research of xAPI. I'm going to drop that link in chat for you right there. And it's by Megan Torrance, and Torrance Learning is indeed sponsoring our cohort for now. And if you know Megan, she has been a wonderful help during this cohort session and, of course, throughout the xAPI cohort history. Now, a number of you are not guild members and you're participating in the cohort, which is absolutely great. But we really would encourage you to go ahead and join the Learning Guild. We have a number of free resources like that report. You become a member, it's free, and you get that xAPI research report. So feel free to join us. In fact, I did drop a link in there, and I see the party link did not drop. So I will, sometimes they're a little longer than what they have me post. So I'll drop a direct link in just a minute or two. So please join us at the Guild. And so today I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jeff Batt. I'm going to stop my screen sharing here and let Jeff start screen sharing. He's with Learning Dojo. He's the founder. He's going to take us through some xAPI demos, and you're in for quite the treat.
All right. Thanks, Karen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, we see it.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Like Karen said, my name is Jeff Batts with Learning Dojo. I teach a lot on xAPI, Storyline, Captivate. I have courses on Udemy and Pluralsight as well. So I've been playing around with xAPI for years, have spoken at previous cohorts as well. And so happy just to kind of share some projects. Karen asked me just to share some of the contents that I've been working on and just to hopefully give you guys a couple of ideas and just think through how this could actually be implemented with a couple of these projects as well. So the first one I want to show you is one that I actually presented at Demo Fest, and this is just a part of it. There's a whole lot of other things that presented at Demo Fest, but this one is the kind of xAPI video hub. And so this is for a company that I do consulting with, and they wanted to have, they don't have an LMS. They didn't want to invest in an LMS, and LMS is pretty expensive. They're a small company, about 300 people. And so they just do mostly video training, basically. And a lot of the videos I help them create as well. And then they wanted to be able to track who completed it because they have a monthly learning challenge that at the end of the month, we basically add up all the time spent learning on different systems. They do have LinkedIn Learning, And so they wanted to add it all up, and then they do a drawing at the end of the month for a couple different gift cards. And so the idea of this was to take some of their TA specific training, because they do have a lot of, like I mentioned, LinkedIn learning training, but they wanted to have very specific TA training, and they wanted to be able to track that. So without a learning management system, that kind of presented the problem of like, okay, how do we first, number one, identify who it is, and then number two, track that they've started the video and then completed the video at the end. And so xAPI was our solution for this case. And so when you first come here, I've already logged in, but when you first come here, it does prompt you for a Google sign in. And so they do use Google and Okta. And so we had to capture who the person was through the Google sign in. So as you all know, xAPI has the three different parts to it. So you have the actor, the verb, and the object. And so that was step number one, is to capture who the person is. And so step number two was to build the this video hub, and so I built this inside of Bootstrap. And so using Bootstrap 5, and they have a lot of the different components. If you're familiar with Bootstrap or not, they have a lot of different components that you can use without having to style everything. And Karen, I forgot to mention this to you. I don't have my chat pulled up, so I may pause and see if there's any questions. So if you want to be reading along there, but so there is the video hub. When you come to it, you could search for a specific video up here. And so if I'm searching for something like NetSuite, they have NetSuite training, then it would easily filter out there. Now, these are slider components that we can use from Bootstrap. And so you could search the different categories. They wanted a very Netflix type of fill, basically. And so if you come in here and you find that content, what it does is it pulls up a modal. It will pop up over all the other contents. A modal is basically just a pop up. And then it will play the Vimeo video in the background here, or up on the top here. So the Vimeo video, you can't hear the audio, which is fine, but the Vimeo video will play, and it will send over, because we already know who the person is, it will send over an event at the very beginning of the video, of that the user started the video, and then it will send over a trigger to xAPI that the user has completed the video. And so we don't have anything. We could track if they paused the video, if they reached halfway, but they mostly, in this case, just wanted to focus on the time that they started, or if they started, and if they completed the video as well. So that is just one example. We have this going to Watershed, which is the learning record store here, which is a free account of Watershed. You can get like default reports with Watershed. And you could do this with any LRS, learning record store, with like Veracity or whoever you're working with. But then the xAPI data, let me go into the data search here. And then it comes into, all that data comes into here as well. So all that's kind of set up to perform, or to send over the xAPI statements and then feed it into the learning record store. So that is one example. Karen, are there any questions on that example before I move on to a different one? And I didn't hear anything,
It
so
takes
I'm
a
assuming
while to
no.
get back on stage, so but no, there aren't
Oh, yeah.
any questions.
Okay, cool. All right. So that is the Video Hub, and that is live and working there. So the next ones, I want to actually show a couple that are templates that I've developed to help people with xAPI and tracking both video, PDFs, as well as interactive video. And so I'll show a couple of those. You can get all of these templates that I'm about to walk through for free. I am not tracking anything like that, or it's not going to cost you anything, but it's under the templates. I like to develop stuff and just share them out as well. And so if you go down to the xAPI learningdojo.ninja, click on templates right there. And if you scroll down, there is a lot of different xAPI templates. We'll cover the PDF xAPI wrapper. We'll cover the Vimeo, YouTube, and interactive. I do a lot of video, and so I like the idea of being able to track video. because I think it takes a lot to do video. It takes a lot of lighting and setup and other things like that. And so my kind of pull or curiosity has always been, how can we know if that has been effective? Has the video that we've done and produced actually been effective? Where do they pause it? Where do they complete it? How many starts versus complete do we have? And so I've always kind of leaned more towards kind of the video aspect of it. So I have a lot of video templates there. And so all you have to do is basically click on download template, enter in an email, and it will send you the template from there. So I wanted to cover a couple of these, and let me actually pull this up right here. I'm going to add a new screen. And so the first one I'm going to cover is the xAPI video local wrapper. And so if I open this up, you can just open this up inside of any text editor. If you want to see this a little bit better, the code, go into full screen in AirMeet. Make sure that you can see the code a little bit, and so in here, all I had to do was open it up in Visual Studio Code, and now I can start editing the files. Now, a lot of this is kind of set up for you as a template, but I'm also going to explain what I'm doing in the code here. And so you don't, to take advantage of this, you don't have to know any type of code, just know where to actually edit some of the code there. And so I'm going to come into the JavaScript file here, or the JS folder, and there is a settings.js here. Now, this has a couple different settings that you would need to adjust to take advantage of this. And then there is the index.html here as well, which I'm going to go ahead and preview just to show you what it looks like first. And then we will enable the xAPI here in a second. So just a simple video. You can totally rebrand this however you want. We have a title, we have a description, we have a video right here. And this is a local video. And so local video meaning that it's inside of my folder. So if I double click into here, that file, the media file is right there. So all you would have to do is replace that. If you name it the same thing, you don't even have to touch much of the code either. It does need like an initial poster, like a screenshot of the very first part of the video. That's just how HTML works. Luckily, with YouTube and Vimeo, those templates, you don't need to do that, but with the local one, you do. You can swap out the logo, the Learning Dojo logo, with your own logo and completely rebrand it there. And there you go. So that's where those files are. And you can create this inside of Camtasia. You can create that using Final Cut, Premiere. Wherever you create your video, you can go ahead and do that. And you don't even need to touch anything inside of the index.html. All of the settings are inside of the settings.js, and this is using just variables basically. So variables in JavaScript, you just say let's, you give it a variable name, equal, and then in quotes, you can type in a pathway to the video. You can swap out the different text as well. So all of that's available here. So right here, I'm going to skip down to this display labels section down at the bottom. And this is where it has the path to that video. So if my video is named something different, I can just, within the quotes, don't delete the quotes there, but within the quotes, you can name it to whatever you want there. If you want something on the, going back, I'm just going to swap back and forth here. But if you want this to be something different, I can go ahead and just within the quotes, sample video. There we go. And then now it automatically updated. So that's how you can come in and kind of swap all of that information out. So what this is set up to do is it's set up to send the xAPI statements at different parts, which I'll get into that code if you want to see what's actually happening. But I do need to enable xAPI reporting. So all I have to do here is change this to true. That will now prompt the, if I go back in here, it's gonna prompt me to capture who the person is with a simple name and email, basically. You can change that to be grabbing from a Google login, Okta login, whatever you have enabled for your company there. And so now I need to add a key, a secret, and an endpoint like you do when you're connecting anything with xAPI. That's like step number one. You need to have the key, the secrets, and the endpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and go into a test learning record store I use all the time, which is Scorm Cloud. And in Swarm Cloud, if I go down to my xAPI LRS section here, this is where I can capture the endpoint right here. So the endpoint is basically lets xAPI know where you're going to send this data to. So that is basically a unique URL. Whatever your instance is, every learning record store will enable or show you what that is. And so I'm going to copy that and paste it right into the endpoint. Again, don't get rid of the quotes. It's very picky. If you got rid of the quotes, it will throw off a lot of things. And then I need this key and secret. So this key and secret, I just copy the key. I paste that into this first one right here, even though I did misspell that. I have a cur ref instead of key ref. I should have named it key ref, but I haven't changed that yet. I've been lazy. So, and then the secret ref, so secret reference basically is what that's standing for. I mean, you can name it whatever you want, but so that's all you have to do. So now at this point, I've connected. I've changed the title. I haven't changed the video. I'm just going to leave the video as is. You can change the description. You can change the path to the author if you wanted to do that, or you could just kind of delete that, and then there would be nothing there as well. But just by doing that, now if I come back in here and I'm going to say Joe Schmo and then enter in my email, and then hit save user info, it's going to play the video. And it's just as soon as that is captured, it's going to hit play. And then as soon as it pauses, it will actually track an xAPI statement as well. So I'm going to come into my learning record store data feed here. And you can see right here, here is Joe Schmo played video one. So whatever you named your video. And then Joe Schmo paused video one at 2 seconds. And so it actually lets you know where the user has actually paused the video, which is really useful information if you want to know where somebody's actually pausing it there. So I'm going to hit play. And again, I'm going to turn down the volume here just for me. I know you can't hear it, but they're just saying a lot of gibberish there. As soon as it reaches halfway, it's going to send over an xAPI statement as well. So now you know if they've reached halfway. So coming back into Swarm Cloud, you can see right here, Joe Schmo viewed half of video one. So now they've viewed the half of it. They've reached halfway. And it will send over an xAPI statement as soon as they complete it as well. And I think it does it a couple seconds before completion, in case you have like an end tag. I ran into that when we were implementing xAPI on videos. Is our organization that I was working for had like a little logo tag at the end of it, and we found that people were closing out as soon as the logo actually appeared. And so, if you're waiting until it completely ends, then you may run into some issues that so you may want to do it like maybe 10 seconds before or 5 seconds before, which is a possibility. So sorry for the continue, or I keep switching back and forth, but there we go. Joe Schmo completed video one. So video one is actually being pulled from right here. So this one, this title, I can rename it to whatever I want. And then every activity, every experience that the learner is going to go through, you needs to have a unique ID. So in this case, it's the object ID, which you typically use your URL, whatever your organization URL is, slash xAPI slash, and then whatever course it is. So in this case, I'm just naming it course one, or I can name it video one or whatever. This doesn't have to be like a real URL. If I copied that and pasted it into my browser, it would go nowhere. It's just a way to uniquely identify this specific activity. And that's important because, I mean, the reason why you use your URL is because nobody else but your organization has that URL. So it's kind of a unique ID, basically. So just swapping out a couple different things like that. Now I have this video, and it's sending over automatically those different statements. So I'll get into a little bit of the code and then pause for questions, and I'll show you how I'm doing this behind the scenes. And the code is when I create a template, I put it on my website. It's basically yours to use however you want. So you could adjust this however you want here. But I have a couple different video events. And so an important part of xAPI is knowing when you're going to trigger the events. So you have what are events? Events are things that happen when the user clicks, when they turn the volume up, when they pause, when they play, when they rewind. Those are different types of events. So understanding the events of your learning experience is an important concept because that's when you trigger the xAPI statement. Even if it's inside of Storyline, some of the events might be when they clicked on tab 1 or when they clicked on tab 2, when an animation reaches another object or something like that. Those are events. And so if you understand to kind of map out the events, then you know where to place your xAPI statements. And so that becomes your strategy, detailing out the different events and then adding the different xAPI statements on top of that. And only track what you need to track. I wouldn't track everything, but track what you need to track that you're going to, the data that you're going to use and for your strategy or basically what information do you want to know about this learning experience is another question. All right, so these video events, this is just regular JavaScript, HTML events. And so on a video, there are different kind of events that happen when that video is played. And so the first thing is the play. Actually, the first thing is on load. So as soon as the video loads, what we're doing is we're sending an xAPI statement. And I have a reusable statement here set up in JavaScript, and I'm just passing in the information that changes. So this one is an initialized verb. I'm grabbing the object name. I'm grabbing some text, and this is how I'm sending over for the object. I'm sending over that statement. So then I have a video on play events, and the reason why it's inside of this if statement is because I only want to send these if that xAPI is enabled. If it's not enabled, and that's the inside of the settings here, if this is not, if this is false, it's not going to send that over. So that's just kind of a way to check that basically. So on pause, it will do that. And then the nice thing about video is it also has so much information that you can grab. So I'm grabbing the current time here because video just tracks what the current time is and it tracks if it's paused and so forth. So we have an on pause event. On time update will happen like every almost milliseconds. And so this is where this event continually happens. And so what we're doing is we're grabbing the current time, this video.current time, and we're rounding it. If you don't round it, you're going to have like 2.1123 whatever seconds, and so it's gonna be crazy if you don't round it. So that's what this is doing here. And then we're basically saying this is how we figure out because they're not playing, they're not pausing. I mean, they're not. There's no click events that's happening. And so as this time is updating, we're saying, hey, if the current time is equal to the halfway time, then send over this event as well. Now I'm also doing it so it only runs it once because it will run it a couple different times if you don't kind of set up this run halfway just once kind of thing. So, and then on ended, it sets the completion. It will send over this event. If it's, I set this up for SCORM as well. If you put it inside of the RustDC SCORM driver, it will actually send over a score and everything. But this is where it will send over the score. Now the save name, save email, that's where I'm capturing the name and the email from the text entry field. That's how you do that. And then this is the send user statement. So this one, I'm doing just a basic JSON format here. And I set it up so it has different parameters that I don't have to have this same JSON code repeated several times. And so it's mostly just, set up there for me to call it again and say, okay, now send a started, now send a completed. And so that's why what I mean by reusable. It's set up as a reusable send basic statement there. And so it is using the ADL wrapper. It's not using like tincan.js. I know there's another option there, but it is using that as well. Now you could do something very similar inside of like Storyline. But you would have to rely on the storyline timeline events. And so you would trigger an event, a storyline event, when not when they pause. I don't think you can do it when they specifically pause, but you can do it like halfway. You can do it at the start, and you can do it at the completed. So very similar. I think this gives me a little bit more control over the different video events, and that's the reason why I went down this route here. So that is the local video. Karen, any questions before I move on to a different one?
You can. Okay. Sorry, takes me a little while. There is just one
From
question. I know you went over the halfway point, but I don't know if we quite caught it. The question was to send halfway view. Do you have create a listener for the video dot current time, or is it video dot current time enabled as the default?
Yeah, good question. I'll pull that back up here. And if you go into the main.js here, it is so on time update. So that is again happening like every millisecond. What I'm doing is I'm grabbing the current time, so video current time, and I'm storing it inside of a variable called current time. That is just a way for me to that variable always has the most updated of what the current time is. Now, I actually have another variable that I'm checking against. And so if current time is equal to, and these are the same types of things you can do inside of the conditions and storyline as well. So if it's equal to video halfway, well, the question is basically, how do I know what the video halfway is? Well, if I scroll back up to the on load metadata, so as soon as the video loads, we can go in and we grab the duration of what the video is. And so there is this video dot duration where you're getting the rounded number of that video dot duration, and we're storing it inside of a variable called duration time. So now we know in that variable, we now know what the length of time of that video is. It's going to change with every video, so I can't really give it a specific number, but that's how it's figuring that out. Now, to figure out the halfway, we are basically just taking the duration and dividing it by two. So divide by two, that gives me the halfway point. So the halfway, the duration and the halfway is already figured out as soon as the video loads. And so I don't have to figure that out again because as soon as the video loads, it has a lot of metadata behind it that we can just go and pull and we can use. So now all I have to say is if current time, because that updates every millisecond, if current time is equal to halfway, so if halfway is 10 seconds, as soon as it reaches 10 seconds, this is going to be true and it's going to send over that xAPI statement. So hopefully that helps.
Thanks,
All
Jeff.
right. Yeah, no problem. So I quickly want to show the Vimeo and the YouTube because it's very similar, just a little bit different code. If there's any type of tool that's out there that has APIs, it allows you to actually send over xAPI statements through the API. And so, but you just kind of have to do it a little bit differently. So I'll do the Vimeo one first. It is, as far as what you need to do for the template, it's pretty much the same thing. So you just go into here, into the JavaScript file. You go into settings.js, and then you just turn on xAPI, add the key, add the secrets. And instead of pointing to a video, you just basically point to the ID of that Vimeo. So I use Vimeo for a lot of like internal hosting. It has a lot of great uses, and it will add chapters and other things like that for me automatically. And so that's the reason why I use Vimeo there. So I still have the object ID, but that's really the only thing I need to do is just put in the ID there. And then as soon as I do that, um, let me just preview this index.html. It looks exactly the same as the other one, but now it's using a Vimeo video. So there's nothing in the media folder. Let me pull that up right here. So this media folder here, there is nothing in that media folder besides the logo and the picture of your profile picture there. And that's what makes this a little bit more lightweight as well. So that's one of the benefits is now you're not having to um, store a video file inside of there. But the same thing happens here. The only thing that's different, and I'll just kind of point where this is out here. So in main.js, we still have the similar types of things. We're triggering a statement as soon as it plays, when it pauses, when it reaches halfway, and when it completes. But you can see here, we're grabbing the video source and using that ID, the ID that's placed in, that's how we load it. And then we are sending over as soon as it's ready. So it has a document.ready. And then it updates the labels here. So those are my labels. But then here is the player dot on play. So it's a little bit different than that just dot on play that the basic HTML does, but this is the Vimeo API that we have to work with. But essentially, what we're doing is the same thing. So we're figuring out the duration time, we're figuring out the halfway as soon as the video loads. We are sending over that statements. So player dot on pause, we are sending over a statement there. On ended, we're sending over a statement, and then on time update is basically the same thing. So we're adding instead of the video dot current time, it's actually data dot seconds is how Vimeo does it. So just adopting to what they do in their API, and then I'm sending over the video at this point. So exactly same setup as the other one, and YouTube is the same way as well. So YouTube, let me just quickly load that one. So I'm going to just drop in the JavaScript file from the YouTube. Um, there we go. So YouTube actually is a little bit different because they have this on YouTube iframe load. And then the events, you set up the events right here. On ready, it's going to call this function. And then on state change, it's going to call that function as well. And then if the you can see that I'm commenting out here. If it's playing, do this. If it's paused, do this. If it's ended, do that. And then on progress is how they figure out the halfway. So if current time is equal to halfway, then we send the statement there. All right, I wanted to quickly point those out, and I'm going to get into the PDF one. This one is a little bit different.
Before you get into that, Jeff, there is a question.
Sure.
Do you know if there are any APIs for Microsoft Stream so we could create something similar to what you did
Yeah.
in the Vimeo of YouTube?
Yeah, good question. The organization that I worked with a while ago, that was the same question. Unfortunately, when we were doing that, there was not. They did say, however, it was on the roadmap. That has now been, I think, a year and a half since I asked. So it may be out there now. I haven't looked. So if it's not, hopefully it's soon. It does take a while to do that kind of thing. But there wasn't an event like or an API where I can say pause, play, and other things like that with Stream when I looked at it a couple years ago. So, all right. So this one, I'm going to pull up here and I'm going to preview it first of all, just to kind of give us an idea of what this one does. So this one is using a library called PDF.js, open source library where you can set up, create like a PDF experience inside of a website. So we're doing the same thing here where we're capturing the person's name. We're capturing the person's email right here. And then I'm saving the user info. So now what's going to happen is the user, this is just a PDF of slides that I've used for various presentations. I basically just have that copied and pasted inside of the assets folder right here. So this xAPI workshop PDF, I created that, put it inside of there, and there we go. So what's happening is there will be as it'll capture the username, and then as soon as I go to the second page, we do this on the second page because we don't really know who the person is until we've actually saved the username. So as soon as they go to the next page, that's when the first trigger will actually send. So and then we don't have anything else specifically in the other pages, but as soon as I go to the last page, it's going to send a completion on the last page. So I'm going to just quickly go through a bunch of these. And I set it up so it's just one slide at a time. With PDF.js, you can actually do like a long scrolling one. Um, and I do have a template for the long scrolling one, just not on my website. You can see I like a lot of memes here, but all right. So there we go. It was really quickly, but down on the bottom, there was a completing button down at the bottom that sends over that completion and shows this message right here that you've completed. So I don't know if this is already hooked up. Not remembering, but I'm going to go into, um, it might be under main.js. Sorry, it's been a while since I've looked at this one. So sometimes when I move on to other things, I forget what I did in the past. So I think here's the object name, here is the object ID, and this one I actually do not, this was set up a little bit differently. The xAPI.js is where this one is on line 108, has the key, the secrets, and the endpoint right there. So I didn't make it easier. I'll probably want to adjust that in the future and just put that inside of like a settings.js. But that's typically how the xAPI, the ADL xAPI wrapper works is it's just on lines 108 and 109 and so forth. So, but I'm going to come into Storm Cloud and I'm just going to hit refresh. And you can see right here, Jeff Batt started the xAPI PDF viewer, and then Jeff Batt completed the xAPI PDF viewer. And we're doing the same thing here is with the PDF.js enabled, we now have the ability to have events on each page. And so on page 2, we have that event. And so that event now triggers the statement. And then the event of the last page will now trigger the statement to be sent over from there. So APIs are really just a way for us to tie into events from other tools, and so that tool could be Twitter. That tool could be, could be like SurveyMonkey or something like that. And so all of those have different events that you can do. SurveyMonkey is actually an interesting one because one more thing I want to show is, and Karen, if there's questions, you can chime in here before I show this last one.
Okay, yeah, there's just one question here. With videos, can you trigger statements when chapters are encountered?
Oh, with Vimeo, there is in their API, there is a chapter API or a chapter event. And so, yes, if you use something like Vimeo API, with YouTube, I haven't looked because chapters are a fairly newer thing with YouTube. I believe so. They would enable that. But yes, the chapters would trigger these different types of events. Good question there.
Thanks.
All right, so Zapier is an awesome tool. It allows me to connect different things if I'm not a coder. And so I can actually go in and take applications that are not specifically, or they're just kind of out of the box. They have like, 2,500 different APIs available and connections already available. So you don't have to do any of that code. Which means that you can get events from like Google Forms. You can get events from like Google Docs or Microsoft 365 or Salesforce or SurveyMonkey or Trello or different things like that. These different types of events are already kind of coded. And then Zapier just makes it easy for you to make that connection. And so one of the nice things about Watershed is Watershed and Grassblade LRS both have connections with Zapier, which makes it easy for you to send an XAPI statement. And so, what we wanted to do, going back to this first example, the training hub that we have, is we wanted to track external learning. And so, we, as in the organization that I'm consulting with, and so we set up a Survey Monkey that as soon as they enter in their name, their email, and time and date, and then they upload proof of the learning that's outside of their standard learning systems, it will actually send over an XAPI statement And it actually creates a Trello card for somebody to follow up and look at the proof and make sure that everything is good. So the way that this is done is all through Zapier. So if I go back into Zapier here, I'm going to go into the new learning completed here, and I'll just show you how I set this up. And it's all just kind of a step-by-step form. And this is just the last one that I want to show off here. But you can see here with SurveyMonkey connected, I've connected the accounts. The next thing I do is I create a Trello card. So I have to connect my Trello account, and set it up, and I just go through step by step. And I say, hey, let's create a new card. And the name of that card, you can see right here, I'm adding a new learning, and then I'm adding a line. And then I'm pulling the data from SurveyMonkey. So it allows me to pull what the person entered in as their first or their full name, basically. And then I'm setting up, and the reason why you see these asterisks is because that's how Trello marks it up. And so that bolds that part, whatever's in the asterisk sign. And then I'm putting the email there, I'm putting the learning category, the time spent. And then as a URL attachment, I'm attaching that image, the proof. And so that is step number one. But step number two is we also wanted to track it. Everything is going into this learning record store. So we track this and we're sending over the statement without any code. Capturing the actor from the SurveyMonkey. I'm capturing the email from the SurveyMonkey as well. I'm then saying, okay, here's the homepage. This is the verb that I want to use. And so it's just a drop down box of all the different verbs. And then here's the activity learning. That's the object. And then the object description, I'm providing more information like time spent and what they've completed on. So just to kind of put this in perspective, now that you know that you can send a statement with something like Watershed, and again, that's just because Watershed has set this up, but Zapier, even if your LRS does not show up here, Zapier does have the ability to hook with webhooks and like custom APIs and stuff. So it can do other ones like other LRSs that have APIs available. But here is the cool thing. So now that we know that this is possible, if I go into a new Zap here, look at all this, and I got the number wrong. I actually swapped that. It's actually 5,200 out of the box different applications, different events that we can then trigger xAPI statements. Now, once you get past 100 in Zapier, these different events that are happening, like 100 per month, you do have to pay, but it's like $40 a month. So it's really not that expensive. But you can see right here, Google Contacts, Google Drive, Trello, SurveyMonkey. But if I come in here, I'm going to search for like Salesforce. So you can see right here, Salesforce. Let's throw out a different one. Let's use something like I don't know if they have Vimeo. Well, there's Vimeo right there. So I could have set up the Vimeo events to happen a little bit differently. So let's search for YouTube. There's YouTube right there. So this is just an easy way to be able to take that connector. And once you have that connector, it gives you the list of the different events. Like I mentioned before, the key step in xAPI is to first figure out the events and then trigger the statement. So this tells me what the different events are, and then I can trigger the statement from there. So I think it's really cool to be able to have this kind of ability. Now we can track a lot of different things from there. So
Jeff, I have a question for you, and we're just about out of time.
okay.
If I understand the question that's being asked, so how would you use a video that's been made in Camtasia that's currently in SkillJar and published as SCORM because it's using the table of contents with the video wrapper example that you gave us?
So you can still publish from Camtasia, or you can still use SCORM, um, and you can have it wrapped up in SCORM. But you could also add on like an ADL wrapper and trigger xAPI statements at the same time, even though it's inside of Skillshare. You just have to do it with custom JavaScript. And so if it's a Camtasia player, you'd have to go into the Camtasia player, figure out the events inside of the Camtasia player, or you could take something like this xAPI local wrapper that I have, and then if you put this inside of a Rustisi SCORM driver, then it would be SCORM enabled, and you just have to put the Camtasia file inside of here. And so now you have SCORM and you have xAPI at the same time. And so it is possible to do. You just have to do it through the custom code there.
All right, great. And then can we track online events such as Zoom sessions?
Let's see if we can do that with Zapier, actually. Zoom sessions, I don't know if Zoom has an API, but let's look up. Oh, there we go. So let's see what the type of events: new meeting, new recording, new registrants, new meeting registrant. So probably, I don't know if the registrants would be like triggers when a new registrant is added to the webinar. I don't know if that happens before or something, but yeah. So that's the if it's not there, then if Zoom has an open API, we can do that kind of thing. Or maybe you have them when they register or when they log in, say, "Hey, everyone, just go check in real quick," and they can go to a SurveyMonkey or Google Form or something, and they fill it out, and that will send over the xAPI statement.
Jeff, thank you so much. We are actually
Yeah, no
at the
problem.
end of our time. And I just want to thank you so much for demoing all of those great templates. I did put the link in chat so that everybody will have it. I'm going to do that once again. And of course, if you are interested in just showcasing your work you've been doing, whatever it is. Maybe you just figured out one thing. Maybe it's just, hey, I know what a statement is and look what I did. We want to see it because we want to know that this is valuable information for you. Jeff did a great job. He took us through step by step, and go ahead and play with those templates. I bet you'll figure out things that is really great. So we will see you next time, and we will have some other demos to show you. So thanks, everyone, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.